And delighted to say David Meyler is here with us. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads.
Is there any hope for Gareth Bale having another couple of seasons where he gets back to being somebody who's capable of doing what he was doing yesterday? Or what's going on with Gareth Bale?
Well, I think the big thing with Gareth Bale is there's always been question marks over his fitness and the injuries he's picked up, whether or not he'd be the same player. I think in the last, 4 goals in his last 4 games. We saw with his performance yesterday, albeit Burnley weren't that a lot. Certainly, look, there's still a player inside there. It's just, we're used to seeing Gareth Bale, this explosive kind of, where he'd play on the wing or as a fullback going back years. He always had that burst of pace. And then the question marks were, does he still have that pace? Does he have that acceleration to get away from players? We're seeing glimpses of it now. Maybe it's just a case for him that he needs, a lot of games to kind of get himself up to kind of match fitness. He's probably been training the whole time. But if Spurs can get him to continue this form he's in, then that's only a plus for them. Because obviously yesterday's performance was very good, but albeit the opposition weren't up to much, and Burnley were very disappointing.
Are Spurs any good?
They're too hot and cold for me. It's a case of they're either very good and put in an outstanding performance, or they're just kind of all over the place at the back. Whether it be Alvaro, Sanchez, Aurier, or right back, there's kind of a mistake looming. And then with Lloris, sometimes he's just not on it. That's the reason why they're 8th in the table, and they're not pushing on the door for the Champions League spots. They're just too inconsistent.
Debate around that Champions League spots was probably the genesis for Jamie Redknapp versus Roy Keane yesterday. You look at that front 4 though, Lucas Moura in behind Kane's son, Gareth Bale. That is 100% attack, an attack that should be contending for a title, never mind actually being in the top 4, right?
They say forwards win you games, defences win you championships. When you're talking about going for the title, you need a squad of 18 to 21 players, 22 players, whatever it may be, to be able to. The prime example is look at Liverpool's defence. In the sense that they've not been able to keep players fit, and that's why they've struggled. Albeit, I know the forwards haven't fired in games, but when you're speaking about Spurs, Harry Kane's world class, Heung-min Son's world class. There's no doubt in that. Gareth Bale, we still have question marks. That's why you asked me the first opening question, is whether or not can he continue this form. There's no doubting that he has been an incredible, player over the last few years, especially with Real Madrid and the Champions League wins and that. Lucas Moura, you look at, is he up to their level? Probably not, no, but he's certainly, the next level down below them. When you talk about winning Premier League titles or be, challenging for the big trophies, you need a full strength squad. You need, your defences to be keeping clean sheets. You need them to be solid. You need to trust them. Whereas I think that's probably the biggest problem Mourinho has is they're not keeping enough clean sheets, but also then if you look at them, they are defending deep because he doesn't trust them.
Are you seeing things that he could be doing differently then as a coach to ensure that deep defending leads to more clean sheets and leads to a better chance of getting that top 4?
I don't think any of us are in a position to tell Jose Mourinho how to coach his team. You look at everywhere he's been, he's won trophies, he's very successful. I think he's probably 2-3 pieces short of what he wants. If you look at all the great teams he managed and won, they always had, an incredible spine through the team. The Chelsea one is the obvious one, being in the Premier League with your Terry, your Lampard, your Drogba and your Cech. I feel he doesn't have the same, with a centre-half. Højbjerg seems to be his kind of go-to man in midfield, that kind of steely midfielder who grafts, wins the ball. And of course, Harry Kane is the talisman, and Son is there as well. But it just doesn't have the same foundation as one of the teams he's won where, that can be successful and can keep clean sheets. Players that aren't going to make mistakes. I think that's the biggest concern.
The big issue is he's got to keep the attacking talent there long enough for him to give himself the opportunity to buy defenders who are going to be capable of defending the way he wants them to. But I'm not sure if you're Harry Kane, do you believe that that's coming? Have you seen enough evidence of it just yet? You can definitely see, if you were Harry Kane's agent, you'd be saying, you've given them everything. You built that stadium for them. Why don't you just go off and have some crack and win some trophies now? Go on. Every club in the world wants you, Harry. Go and do it.
Yeah, look, of course. That's got to be the biggest thing for Harry Kane. There's no doubting, like, he is a top-class striker. You know, everybody knows that. Anyone, whether you support Tottenham or you don't, you've got to know that. And we've even seen the impact he's had in the team when he was injured. You know, results dropped from him, and it just shows how important his team. And it was almost felt to me like he was rushed back from injury, but he must have been all right. And you're talking about the agent. Look, the agent can tell you one thing, your father, mother, wife, anything can say something else to you. It's what's really in Harry's head. You know, the prime example, which Harry will probably look back on, would be Alan Shearer. Yes, Alan Shearer won a Premier League with Blackburn, so he kind of had that silverware, and then he was desperate to win it with his, you know, his childhood club. So he goes to Newcastle, but he then goes on to, you know, look, he's 260 Premier League goals. It's whether or not Harry is that desperate to win things, or does he chase the dream with, you know, Tottenham? Does he stay there and see the course? Of course, look, Manchester City, they're always talking about a new striker to replace Aguero. Like, he's almost the perfect fit for them in the sense of someone who can play, score goals. I think the big question really is, what does Harry Kane want? It's all good and well your agent saying, you've done everything you can here, come on, let's go. But there's no doubting he's probably one of the top earners there. He's probably got the rub of the green every year. He probably runs the whole place. You know, you can see even the smallest things I'd noticed that not a lot would. Like, I know Hugo Lloris is captain, he's vice captain. Obviously, the goalkeepers go out first. He's always the first man to lead them out. He kind of likes that important role as being, you know, kind of the outfield captain all the time. You know, obviously being England captain, it's just, does he want to then step into a new environment? Obviously, you're talking about going to win things. That's how we'll be judged at the end. But it's all down to Harry Kane.
Matt Doherty didn't start yesterday's game, but he came up in the conversation that we've already alluded to between Roy Keane and Jamie Redknapp.
Yeah.
This, if you rewind a little bit, David, goes back, maybe not goes back, but certainly if you look at Matt Doherty and what he said about Roy Keane in the past, he was very critical of Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane as managers of the Republic of Ireland. Was Roy Keane settling a score yesterday by bringing up Matt Doherty?
It's hard to say, really. Again, it's a bit like the Harry one. You'd have to ask Roy. Like, obviously, Matt came up with his comments. I remember them. I was a bit surprised with those comments at the time. Of course, look, when it's a catch-22, whenever a player doesn't play for a manager, they usually don't like the manager or have a problem with them. Whereas if you ask the lads who played regularly, my example, say me, I played quite a lot for Martin. You know, I never had a bad word to say about him. I still regularly speak to Martin. So, like, of course, Roy felt he had something to say, so he said it. But look, that's what it is. You know, Roy was obviously probably unhappy with what Matt had said in the past, and just felt yesterday was probably the opportunity. And you know, it's just the way it is.
The trouble for Matt Doherty is he doesn't have much of a comeback, does he, at the moment? Like, he hasn't got in the team, he hasn't improved Spurs, his game hasn't kicked on.
But is the grass always greener? You know, Matt was flying at Wolves, everything was going well for him. You know, he's playing that wing-back role. You're playing week in, week out. Obviously, Wolves were doing fantastically well. You know, did well in the Europa League. And then, of course, if the opportunity comes to go to Tottenham, you're looking at saying, look, they're pushing top four all the time. They were in the Champions League final a few years ago. Maybe this is the next step for me in my career. And he goes and it doesn't work out. Like, the big thing, Matt has played, of course, in the 5 with Tottenham, but it seems Mourinho now wants to play a 4 a lot more. So then that doesn't suit Matt, which it seems that he doesn't seem to trust Matt in a 4. But look, Matt's just got to keep his head down, keep working hard, and you know, find a way into that team. Because look, results haven't been great for Spurs. Yes, they won 4-0 yesterday, but they are too inconsistent. And if Matt can find some consistency, whether that be in training or, you know, the opportunities he does get in games, he's got to take them, because for Ireland's benefit, we can't have him sitting on the bench and not playing games. We need him in tip-top, you know, shape coming into these international games.
Is Roy Keane like Arya Stark? Does he have like a list of people that he needs to exact revenge on, do you feel, in the Sky Sports studio?
It's almost as if you're trying to get me to say something about Roy, but it's, you No, but look, Roy has his opinion. He's entitled to his opinion. I wouldn't say it's a case of that he wants to get one back over, lad. I think even the part of Matt's interview, he said he had a phone call with Roy. So I don't think Roy waits to go on Sky Sports to say something about someone. If Roy has a problem, he'll ring you and let you know. So I wouldn't say it's a case of he's waiting to be on Sky, waiting till that team's playing and that player's not playing to have a pop off them. I don't think that's the case, no. It's just the way that all arose yesterday from, I suppose, Jamie Redknapp giving his point and making his argument about Spurs and what he thought about the team. And then him and Roy kind of went tit for tat and went back and forth. But I don't think it's a case of Roy is on his way to the Sky studio and thinking, right, who's playing? Who can I have a go off? I don't think that's certainly not the case, no.
Let's talk about Manchester United. Since Spurs hammered them, they've had, I think, is it 6 or 7 games against the so-called top 6 teams, and
5 draws and 1 loss.
5-0 nils, I think, and a 1-0. So 1 goal conceded and no goals scored. It's almost like they've had a massive overreaction to the absolute hammering that they took against Spurs. Is that what it is, a little bit? That in Solskjaer's head is like, okay, we tried to go out and play a bit of football and we got absolutely annihilated. What we're going to do is batten down the hatches, and ultimately, draws against these teams, that's not the worst thing in the world.
No, of course, look, you listen to the pundits like Roy, whatever they said, like our mentality was to go and win games. If you scored 1, fine, we were going to score 3 or 4. I think the Tottenham game probably was an eye-opener for them when they got cleaned out. So they've just gone, let's be solid. Let's be hard to beat. Like United are second in the table, albeit yes, they're 12 points behind City. But it's a case of like in those games, when you're kind of, you're looking for an excuse and you kind of go, well, we've got the clean sheets. Now can we go and, nick a goal or whatever? And you've seen that by Solskjaer's, post-match interview where he kind of says, oh, well, we were kind of robbed of that game. We should have had a penalty, and then they're talking about these small margins. But I think overall they'll be happy if we're not losing, if we're not conceding goals and we're not losing games, can we add like more attacking flair and kind of create? They were poor yesterday in front of goal. Going forward, you think like of the players that they have with Greenwood, Rashford, Dan James, who I thought was excellent, and then of course I know Martial's not in great form, but certainly with Bruno. And I think there has been this big thing about Bruno, if you've seen it, like is kind of he's not scored or assisted in, obviously against the top 6 since that penalty he scored against Tottenham. It's kind of like, well, he does it against everyone else. I just feel that United are probably setting up in those games not to be beat. And if we nick one, we nick one, but we're certainly not going to concede. We're going to be, strong. I think United have been slightly lucky to find themselves in this position that it'll be one of those at the end of the season that they'll look back on those games. Could we have maybe gone on and won against the big 6, and then we could have closed the gap? Who knows if we could be next to Man City at the top of the table. I think that will probably be their regret. But certainly, look, it's a foundation to build on going forward. If you're drawing those games, that's what they'll be looking at. Can we now go on and win them? But definitely after the Tottenham game, there's been a big shift in mentality coming into the big games.
Damien Delaney repeatedly described them as submissive yesterday. Can a team who is submissive then turn into title winners the following season? Because it seems like a bit of a mentality shift.
It's going to be tough. Like you look at Manchester City are probably nailed on to win this. Obviously, the 12 points with 12 games to go. We don't see them going on kind of this losing streak anytime. You can bet that Liverpool are obviously going to reevaluate their situation. They'll have their players back. They're going to be thinking, we want the Premier League title back. So, of course, it is going to be difficult for them, like Manchester United, to go on. There's no doubting that if they can pick up an extra couple of wins, and if you think about it, at the start of the season, their home form wasn't great, but their away form was. If they turn some of them losses into draws into victories, that gap would be shortened. So there's no doubting that they can certainly close the gap. They just need to turn around results. And you can imagine with Manchester United, they're going to look in the summer at the transfer market and see what areas they can, pick up on a key player who's available to obviously improve and strengthen the squad.
How many players do you think Manchester United need? Like, Martial at the moment, and his form is so bad. At the same time, most of the teams have carried somebody who hasn't been in great form as part of their attacking team, and have had to weather the storm with that. Even City to a certain extent earlier on in the year. You know, is it one player who contributes 20 goals from that? Is it one creative midfielder who would allow them to have like 40% possession in those games against the other sides in the top six, or 50% possession? Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, but they definitely need a striker that's going to get them 20 plus a season. Like, inverted commas, we've seen the stats of Haaland in Germany, in the Champions League, whatever. Just kind of makes you think, why didn't they sign him at that time? Martial look, he's very hot and cold when he's on it. If you remember, when the season returned after lockdown, he was on fire. Now he's just kind of gone through a blip. There's no doubting he'll come good again and score goals. Cavani, unfortunately, is at the end of his career, and you can see the impact he's had and how good of a player he is. But I think United are probably, I'll go and say, 3 players short of really pushing. I think the centre halves, I think they need a proper partner for Harry Maguire. We've seen that. I think his partnership with Bailly is probably better than the partnership with Lindelof, probably because Bailly is more pace. They seem to complement each other well. Whether or not Ollie will actually stick with that, because he seems to play Maguire and Lindelof in all the big games. I think they need a world-class holding midfielder. Like Fred and McTominay do complement each other well as well. But we're talking about, if you look at the great Manchester United teams, they've always had spearhead midfielder. If you go back the early generations, which are kind of Brian Robson's, and then obviously Roy Keane, Paul Scholes. Even the next in line was Nicky Butt, who was a phenomenal player in the Premier League that people kind of underrate. You know, so those two would be the main two, and of course, someone to put the ball in the back of the net regularly. You know, Rashford and Greenwood will score a lot of goals, but if you can get an outright striker who's that, like, all he cares about, the kind of Ruud van Nistelrooy, Andy Cole, you know, those ones who are going to get you minimum 20 Premier League goals a season. Like the question I'd ask is, when was the last time a Manchester United player actually won the Golden Boot in the Premier League? If you look at it, like, it's always been like Aguero, Kane, Salah, Mane, Aubameyang to a certain extent, Jamie Vardy. Those fellas are all knocking at the door. If Manchester United can get someone who's going to score 20 plus Premier League goals, then there will be a case that they can win the Premier League title again.
Zlatan won it, I think, did he? Am I making this up?
Yeah, I think you're making that up. I don't think he won it, no.
Okay, I'll look it up. It's a good crappy quiz question there, Owen, if you want to steal one for Friday.
Yeah, that's actually a good question, yeah.
Van Persie was surely in the mix.
I was going to say I would have put Van Persie's the last to win it. If you had to pick me for one name, I would have said Van Persie. But then we're going back a good few years.
We're going back to Ferguson. Like, that's the thing.
Exactly. And this is Manchester United. You know, they are one of the world powerhouses in football. They've got some, like Rashford will still get you 15 goals. Like, Greenwood will get you probably the best part of 10 because he'll be in and out. It's only probably another 2-3 years before he really nails down that starting position. Bruno, of course, will score his goals. We know that. It's just Martial's only getting you 10 or 12. I think, like, that's the question mark when you look at Liverpool. Is like, even as I watched the game last night, Firmino goes through. You've got to score. Ramsdale makes a good save, yes, but I think it's a poor finish. And then, like, there's another one he can shoot and he passes. Like, albeit he gets the strike off for I think he'll be given as an own goal because it looked like it was off target. But that's kind of like Mane and Salah have pushed each other, but they've still turned out 20 plus goals. Firmino needs to get more goals. And if Manchester United can have their wingers scoring, but they've got a striker who's pushing, you know, your Harry Kane, your Aguero, those boys with the 20 plus goals, then United will be a serious threat.
Van Persie was the last one in 2012, 2013, and the previous season. He did it back to back. 1 year for Arsenal, 1 year for Man United.
And did they win the Premier League?
In 2013, they did, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah, that was it. If the famous picture of Van Persie, you know, obviously he goes to United, wins the league, but he has 20 on his back, and then United win their 20 Premier League trophy or whatever it was, 20 league. not Premier League trophy, because they won 13, but 20th league trophy they won. Yeah. So that will show you, though, that they're crying out for that one who's going to get them a big number of goals.
Yeah, it's going to be a key signing. David, just one more thing I just wanted to ask you about, kind of in the context of the last few weeks. Manchester City are going to be nitpicked by everybody because they're so bloody good at the moment. But the last couple of weeks have been interesting when you look at the reintroduction of Kevin De Bruyne. So those Liverpool and Tottenham wins, where they were so brilliant, came without De Bruyne. And of course, he was excellent at the weekend as well, set up the Ruben Dias goal. But is Pep Guardiola struggling to get the best out of this team, their free-flowing best, when De Bruyne is in the team? Well, like, what position do you see him playing for the best version of him and the best version of the team?
I think you could play Kevin De Bruyne anywhere. I did see that debate was risen on Twitter where somebody said, are Manchester City better off without Kevin De Bruyne? I know they went on this mad big, start to the winning team when Kevin was injured or whatever, but you want Kevin De Bruyne in your team. Pound for pound, he's probably the best Premier League footballer. I think the last games, he's coming back from an injury, but he's not going to be at full fitness. And of course, look, Manchester City the other day against West Ham. West Ham caused them problems. Like, West Ham they're not fourth as a joke. Like, they put it up to Manchester City. They caused them problems. They would have taken a lot from that performance. And I think it was Diop had a chance late on with the header. If he gets that right, it's a different ball game. They take a point. But I think with Manchester City, another game goes by, Kevin De Bruyne is getting himself back up to full fitness. Because whether it be, I don't know what he was out for, 3-4 weeks, it will take its toll on you that you lose that match sharpness. Once Kevin De Bruyne has that, then look, they're not slowing down for anyone. I wouldn't be surprised if they went and won their last 12 remaining games of the Premier League, the way they're playing, because they're not playing fantastic. Certainly in the last two, the Arsenal game and of course the West Ham game, but they're winning games. They look so solid at the back. They don't look like they're going to see goals. And with the players that they have, it only takes one moment of brilliance from one of them that they'll score the goal. So to answer your question, Guardiola will find a way to make it work. They've always done it. And certainly I think any team in the world would take Kevin De Bruyne.
No question about that. It's just more, what would your combination in midfield be to complement him?
Well, I think the big thing for him is you can't really play Fernandinho and Rodri, because they're both very similar. I think Rodri's more of a passer. Like, not saying that Fernandinho isn't a very good passer, because he is, but he's kind of the one who's always breaking up, counter-attacks, tackling. I think you just kind of play him, Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne in front of the two of them, and then whether or not he goes with Mahrez or Bernardo on the right, Sterling on the left, and then Aguero through the middle. And then you kind of I think Gundogan kind of took on that responsibility of being the one that broke forward all the time. But look, Kevin could play as a deep-lying playmaker, like alongside of Fernandinho or Rodri, and then just start singing balls around the place, or he can play that one more advanced for, those kind of cues, through balls, passes, whatever. It's a good decision to have for Pep, to think, where am I going to fit all these world-class players in?
Yeah, because you got to stick Phil Foden in that team somewhere as well.
I know, you think, but I've just rattled through the team there, and I've even left Phil Foden out. That's the squad and depth they have. That's why they are where they are, and they're pushing on all fronts for all 4 trophies.
Yeah.
It's just their squad. Even as centre halves, you look at Diaz and Stones. We stopped talking about Laporte, who's been instrumental for them for the last few years. It's just crazy that the players they have.
Right, good stuff, David. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.